at home. Or actually, that's kind of good because we had your website up there that had that one image. So now it's not even there. It's not on my video. Oh, you changed it. Okay. Okay, so plugins, as we've talked about, plugins can be perceived as added functionality. There's literally thousands and thousands to choose from. One of the things that I suggested that you do is start making a list of what kind of functionality that you want for your website. So at this point, you should have some rough ideas. As Mohammed, as you were talking about your site, I'm thinking of all sorts of different things that you can do a scheduler so that people can request appointments. You can do all sorts of things. James, I'm not sure exactly where you're going down your rabbit hole yet, but
you're basically a page website plus all the sections.
Okay, for your blogging. Okay. All right, cool. So there's all sorts of things because you can link, you can do RSS feeds, you can do all sorts of different things with your site. Craig, with yours, lots of things that you can do with that, especially being a resume site, because the number one thing that you want to focus on for yours would be SEO. Because when people, you don't agree? Oh no, you're fixing your eyes. I said that SEO, and you're going, no. Okay, so SEO is really significant for a resume website because when people are looking for a web designer, and say for example you apply, they're not going to seek you out, but when you apply, what's the first thing they're going to do? Type in your name in Google. So when they type in your name in Google, if you've got a really significant website and they see it at the top of the list, you've demonstrated you can develop a website and you understand exactly wherever you speak. So there's plugins to help you, and Yoast is a massive one for that. I believe ASCII.Met will help you as well. We'll talk about that one in a couple minutes as well. And Heather, your site, I'm sure there's lots of functionality we can add, but I don't really know where you're going yet with it. So. But we'll figure it out, and then I can offer some ideas. But at this point, we should have some rough things that I'd like to do. Yeah.
Are your slides on straight in order? Because I was trying to.
No, I think I've tried to keep it in order of the syllabus. So if you go to week 12, say for example, or week 11, you should see this one. All right. So look under the WordPress module. All right.
Is there like a library where?
That's a good question. Is there a library? There is. You can go on to your installation, and you can click on Add a Plugin, and then that should take you to a screen that's got all sorts of different plugins. Now you can type in. Now what you don't want to do is you don't want to search the ones that you've already got. So select Add a new plugin. Yep, and then you can type in whatever functionality it is that you want. And then it'll pull up a bunch of them. Then all you have to do is find the one that you want. I'd recommend reading the reviews before installing, because what you're going to, as Heather's nodding away, there's lots of stuff out there, lots of garbage out there, and look at the users' reviews because WordPress is a sharing community. People will often give more reviews and more accurate reviews more readily with WordPress or with Joomla or with Drupal because it's an open source community. So everyone's trying to help everyone out. So look, check it out, go for the highest stars. But one of the things that you're going to get sucked into is you're going to see a great plugin and you're going to go, I need that, and you're going to install it and everything's going to be great. And then it's going to say, okay, so now you've tried it, now pay up. So that's what we call in the business freemium services. They present it as free, but they're really premium. Okay? All right, so plugins are available everywhere. It's going to be overwhelming unless you take it in an organized fashion, and that's making a list of what you'd like to see. I would recommend doing a user diagram. So jot down exactly the journey of the user, what you would expect them to do. And go, okay, you know what, once they log in onto my site, I want them to do this, I want them to do that, I want them, and then you can start going, okay, they're going to need this functionality for this goal. They're going to need this. And then eventually you're going to develop your wants and needs, and then you can find the appropriate ones. Keep a record of every plugin that you use, because if you start developing more and more websites, what you're going to find is that you're going to reuse some of these plugins. And I've started doing that, and it's a time saver, because what happens is I've got one client who's got a whole list of plugins that we've used, and then similar ones over here, but now I have to research them again. So I found it, but it's not the same one, so now I have to learn that one as well as maintain that one. So it's kind of what I was saying, Heather, at the start of the class, is if you can find a theme that you're very comfortable with, it can be a premium theme, keep using the same theme. Because if you're developing sites for everybody, what will happen is you're going to cut your development time down dramatically, because you'll know exactly where to go to find all of the information, find how you update the custom CSS. The one that I use actually has a section that I can change all the CSS by just selecting toggle switches and whatnot and selecting color. And I can basically coach someone over the phone because I use it so much. And that's significant. So be consistent with what you're doing, so that way you're more important to your client. Okay, so actually look at that, Mohammed. It's like I knew that you were going to ask that question. So there's how to add a WordPress plugin. Like I say, that's one way of doing it. All right, by searching on the page. The other way is to search on the on Google, and then what you can do is you can find all sorts of different plugins, and then you download it. Do not unzip it; like they'll come to you as a zip file, and then you. And I don't know if this will be clear because this camera or this projector is awful. Let me see if I can see it on this because it's an older version. So up here, upload plugin. You just click that, and then it'll take you to your directory. And then you can just find it where you downloaded it, click it, and then it'll upload it. Then all you have to do is activate it. Now, there are some plugins out there where once you've activated, you also have to change some settings and whatnot and customize it to make it your own. So you may need to do that, and sometimes you'll find the settings right here under settings. There's other times that it'll add another entry into your dashboard. So those are the two ways that you can do it. Okay, so plugins, I would strongly recommend that every website should have these three plugins. Yoast, as I mentioned, because it's your SEO specialist, and it's kind of a freemium service, but I gotta say for freemium services out there, they give you a ton for free. So I would recommend going with Yoast. Backup Manager. Now, this one's a good plugin, but James and I had a quick exchange about one called Manage WP, and I'm going to talk about that one more at length at the end. But they also have a backup manager, and I'm going to talk about where you should be backing up, etc. And the last one is a contact form creator. Now, the de facto two is, one is WP Forms, and then the other one is Contact Forms. It used to be Contact Form 7, but Contact Forms, it's a little slower to develop, but it's far more robust. You can add drop downs, you can add checkboxes, radio buttons, you can do all sorts of things. I actually created a truck maintenance check-in for my uncle using a contact form. And then you can play with these plugins as well, because a contact form is supposed to just email you with whatever that person's filled out the form. But there's also other plugins that will add functionality to it, and one of them is DB Contact Forms, where once they press submit, it'll send out an email, but it's also going to write all of that information to a section of your database. So then the really nice thing is you can access all that later on. You can search it, you can do all sorts of different things. So those are the three that I would say are the most important. There are also there's others that are significant. Okay, so like I said, the backup plugin, I'm probably going to steal my thunder, but that's okay because I want to make sure that we get you guys some time. When you're backing up your website, use a plugin, because what will happen, and the problem with backup plugins is that they're really premium, because what they'll do is they'll say, well, we can back up this much, or we're going to back up only these sections of your databases. So there's a service called Manage WP, and they had the market so good, like they understood everything that we needed as web designers. Google bought, or not Google, GoDaddy bought them. So that's now a feature of GoDaddy. Now, the nice thing about that with the backup services is you can back up to your hard drive or to a cloud. So you can go to Dropbox, you can go to iCloud, you can go to their own servers, and which is really, really significant. Now, I would recommend when you're backing up, and I asked this question, I know it's in there, but I'm going to steal it anyways. When you're backing up, I'd recommend doing 2 copies, one local and one to a cloud. All right, so you can never have too many backup copies of a website, because I have one website that I maintain where we've got over 100 spec sheets, and so they're all in post. Then we've got all their news articles, so there's more. Then we've got all sorts of other items, and then their pages, and it's probably, the website's probably at this point about 125, I'm going to call them page/posts. So if someone were to hack into that and I didn't have it backed up, that would be financially devastating, not only to my client, but to me, because now I've got to rebuild all those things, and because I'm the webmaster, I've got to do it myself for free. So always do that. It's always a good idea. I would say when you're trying to set up a backup schedule, I would go with something where it's conducive to what you're doing. So if you're only adding one spec sheet every 2 weeks, there's no need to back it up every week. I'd go every month. So if you lose something, you lose one article. If you're doing it every day, I'd suggest every week, because it is a little bit more time consuming. But certainly it's not going to be the end of the world if somebody hacks your site or the database goes corrupt. Okay. So like I say, I'd go local, and I would suggest something that's encrypted as well. So like a Dropbox. Because Dropbox, all their data is encrypted, so when somebody gets into it, if someone were to break into it, they're not going to see what your information is. Now, the other thing, so because you were speaking of e-commerce, Tamar, I would strongly recommend looking at encryption services. If you're accepting payment, you should be using PayPal. You should be going to your bank and setting things up, because you cannot set up an e-commerce like a shopping cart where you're storing the credit card information. So the banks will have things that will help you along with that, but I got to be honest, you cannot store it. Okay.
The encryption service.
Yes. And what it'll do is, you guys, and I'm sure I've asked this already, but you guys have heard of hashing and salting? No? Oh, it's great. You put salt on no, anyways. Hashing and salting is an encryption service. And basically what it does is it takes your password and it encrypts it. So like, say for example, your password is password. It'll encrypt it to 26 characters. They are not going to make a word of sense to anybody. But then they take that password and they encrypt it to 64 characters. So now there's no resemblance from the encryption to your original password. However, what'll happen is when it's decrypting or unencrypting it, when you enter in your password, it will know what that password is. So if you were to punch in your encryption, so say for example that 64 character key, if you were to punch that into the password, it won't accept it. So it knows, it associates that string of characters with your password. And only that string of characters with the password will let you in. So that's what I would suggest with an encryption service. So they'll take and now with all the data laws and things along those lines, it's no longer a whole lot of fun to be in e-commerce, because you've got to make sure that you can't store data. You've got to make sure that you're deleting the data on an appropriate basis, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so lots of changes, but that's what I would recommend for you. Okay, so that's the backing up. Contact forms. Like I say, the contact form plugin is very intuitive, very user-friendly, and that's really significant if you're trying to develop one. I've messed around with many of them, and I've cursed and swore at every one of them except contact forms. And the nice thing with contact form is you can set it up, and it will do an autoresponder for you. So once the customer fills out the information through the contact form, it will say, we've received your email and we'll respond accordingly, or whatever you want the message to be. Now, the only challenge with this is sometimes you'll get stuck in spam filters, because what happens is, for mine, say keith@keithconnell.ca, because I'm sending it through my website, that's not really the email that's associated, because it's a WordPress site. So spam filters go, whoa, wait a minute here, your email address doesn't match the URL that it's being sent from. There's a problem. So you can set up your website with plugins to mask your email accordingly. So then once they press send, it'll go out as if it's from you directly, rather than user@WordPress.com or whatever. Okay? And typically, you can get all of this done. A lot of them are pre-built. It's relatively straightforward, but if you want to customize, I think that's the easiest way to go. Okay, additional functionality. So these are some more of the plugins that we're talking about. So at this point, we should be at a stage where we're starting to think about the end result of your website. Yoast, as I've mentioned, and I'm not in any way affiliated with Yoast. WP Forms, contact forms. Opt-in Monster. Again, Opt-in Monster is a good one for your constant contact and your. Trying to think of the other one now. My mind's blank. All right, it'll probably hit me in a couple minutes. But anyway, so the broadcast email. So that's what that's good for. So you just create a sign up. Say, hey, sign up to our newsletter. Fill in your name and fill out your email address. You do that, and you automatically go to your to that list. Thank you, MailChimp. Because that's my go-to. I don't like Constant Contact personally. I like MailChimp, especially if you're starting out, because it's freer. So, and when I say freer, I just mean that both have a trial version. MailChimp, I think you're allowed to send out 2,000 emails a month. Now, when I say 2,000 emails, I don't mean so I can send something out 2,000 times. I mean, if you sign up, that's 1. If James signs up, that's 2. If I send out to both of you, that's 4, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a good service. There's a lot of good templates out there as well in MailChimp. Yeah.
How do you feel about when websites auto-click something for you, like sign up and newsletter, they already have to click for you, save, credit card later, have it saved? According
to Castle, that's highly illegal now. Any opt-ins at all must be blank. So if you are doing a sign up, you've got to have that checkbox blank, because otherwise what's happening is you're automatically registering. But with Castle, what they are saying is it's at least 1 opt-in, best case is 2 opt-ins. Now what a double opt-in process is you fill out the form, you've got to check that box and say, yes, I'm interested in subscribing. You press submit, that's your first opt-in. Then if you think about some of the things that you signed up with, then you'll get an email saying, hey, by the way, you registered here. Can you just click here to verify your email address? So then you've clicked the second time. Now you've double opted in. Okay, so back in the day, people were buying lists that are over 1 million names long. And what they would do is they'd just start blasting it out, and it's all spam, but they would blast the names hoping that there'd be some value in those 1 million names. So yeah, no longer, it's really come down. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at Castle, but there's up to fines of up to $1 million per complaint. So they don't take it kindly in Canada anymore. So yeah, and the other thing is Castle has set the stage for other countries. So I would strongly recommend building it with a double opt-in. What would happen is when people were buying with 1 million names, what they would do is they would just import it through one of the servers like MailChimp or Constant Contact, and that was fine because they bought the list, they imported it in, away they went. But now you can't import massive lists like that. They have to be individual.
What is the reference for this which privacy legislation?
It's CASL, C-A-S-L. I believe it's called the Canadian Anti-Spam Legislation. It's, like I say, it's really sticky. The only real way around it is if you do the double opt-in as well, or if you can prove that you've got an existing relationship with that consumer. Or if they've scrubbed your website for your email address. So if you put your email address on your website and they send it out, you're no longer covered under CASL because you've put it, you've published it. Okay. So we've got Security. Now this one's one version of security software. There are several out there. Manage WordPress or Manage WP has a great one that will monitor for any hacks. If somebody tries to access a file that's not there, Manage WP will flag you and they'll block that IP address. So that's good.
So the whole point of opt-in is that you must first subscribe
before you can send them any emails. They've got to subscribe to you. You can't add them unless you've got a paper trail where, in your situation, say you is it your uncle?
Yeah.
Okay, so say your uncle's driving school. He's got a database already of email addresses.
Yeah.
They're existing. They've already, say, paid for a service. So they're a customer.
Right.
It's not illegal to send an email to a customer.
No, I'm reading their law. It's saying.
Wow, you're reading that fast because that's huge.
No, because they're saying that unless you have an existing relationship with that.
Exactly. So that's what I was saying. So if they were a customer, that's an existing relationship. If that customer has emailed you, so say, for example, I've got an info at, and they send me that email, all of a sudden now it's okay. Like, some people will err on the side of caution and say, oh, well, you know what, is it okay to send you an email? I think it's kind of overkill because you're sending them the email just asking if they can, anyways.
Right.
So once they've reached out to you, as long as you've got a paper trail to say, no, they reached out to us, here's the initial contact, here's when we sent it, you're okay. All right. Backup Buddy, as I mentioned, again, Backup Buddy is very similar to Manage WP. I'm a big Manage WP fan, and I'll explain why in a couple minutes. Buddy Press, if you're looking to develop a social website, Buddy Press is a pretty good one to go with. I don't know if you guys had heard of the Laurentian problem, but when Laurentian pulled away from Georgian, my wife was left out in the cold. So what we did was we created, through Buddy Press, we created a social network of all the Laurentian students who were affected. And we tried to affect change, but it was unsuccessful. But it created kind of a pseudo Facebook. So you could communicate with Craig, and Craig could communicate with Heather, et cetera, via this website. So it's a very powerful plugin. Just bear in mind, though, if you're looking to become a Facebook, I would recommend getting your own special code, okay, rather than using a plugin. Jetpack comes basically, these next two, this one here is actually coded, as far as I understand, ASCII is coded by the developer of WordPress. So that's kind of neat. That's an anti-spam for comments. So it's going to check for people that are sending in things that are spamish in nature. So say, for example, on my comments that I get in all Russian. Well, okay, that's kind of a spam. Or talking about Cialis or whatever the case is. Those are all keywords that you should be aware of that will block it. And when you're dealing with no, I don't have that one up there. But when you're dealing with, say, for example, Constant Contact, and you're sending out a broadcast email campaign, you should be very hyper aware of what constitutes a spam, because the servers will flag certain words that you use in your subject line. So if you put in your subject line free, you're flagged. If you put in anything to do with Cialis, you're really flagged. But things like that you should be aware of. Anything that sounds salesy will probably get flagged. So if you want it to get through, make sure that you're including the person's name, because a lot of the time with these servers or services, you can include first name in the subject line. Include it in the subject line. So that way it's personal. Now the spam filters are going, okay, they know each other. So if I want to send it, I'd say, Justin, check out my latest blog, 10 things your competitors didn't want you to know. Now all of a sudden I'm personal and it's not really spammy in nature. let's see, user registration. That's kind of the similar idea that we were talking about with registering for newsletters, etc. XML sitemaps. It aids with indexing your site. I'd recommend utilizing it. It's considered passé with a lot of developers, just like sitemaps are really considered passé. Oh, you don't need them the way that Google's indexing. Anything you can do to give yourself an advantage, do it. Because now you guys have used sitemaps before? You know of them, but do you know what they do? That's actually an excellent way of putting it. Yes, it's a table of contents. You're telling Google, these are all my pages. Come visit. And what you do by putting them on there is then Google knows, okay, I can go here. And then once I go here, because you're using the in-page links or the in-site links, now I go, okay, there. Okay, so I'm going to go over there. Oh, okay, I see the relevance. And I know it doesn't think that way, but the algorithm thinks that way. Oh, there's a relevance here. Go over here. Oh, there's an outbound link over to this site. Oh, that's highly relevant. And that all builds towards your SEO. So I'd recommend using sitemaps wherever possible, although some people will disagree. I don't. I think that it's a great tool. And like I say, anything that you can do to help yourself, do it. The other one is the robot.txt. There are robot.txt builders. Same idea. I'd utilize them, although some people say, eh. I also am a heavy user of the description to make sure that there's keywords in the description. So, you know, things along those lines. The last one as well is a slider development. You guys all have seen a slider. I guarantee you might not have heard it called a slider in the day. You've heard it called a banner ad. You've heard it called all sorts of a pain in the ass sometimes, but the sliders are very, very significant if they're used appropriately. So not a lot of themes come with a slider developer, so you're going to probably want to look for one of those in a plugin. Going back to the one I use, it actually has its own developer. Actually, there's two different sliders. There's one called Layer Slider, and then the second one is called Fusion Slider. So you've got two choices, and they're premium, actually. So you get some really neat ideas. Any questions so far? Now, we're a little over. Yeah, Shamar?
You said you've seen them coming on this property, so what is a property used for?
Oh, okay. A lot of people will use sliders and overuse sliders. So what happens is, and you see it, and I can't speak for all of the instructors, but you see it a lot on PowerPoints where special effects everywhere, and your eye just doesn't know where to go anymore. So when they click this button, all this comes in, and then all of a sudden a flash over here and a flash over here. It's overwhelming. It's sensory overload. So a lot of people will design based on, oh, well, this is neat, so I'm going to put a banner right up at the top of the page. Oh, but this is really cool, so I'm going to put a banner right underneath it. Oh, and this one's really neat here. I'm going to put the slider over here. And all of a sudden, you've got all sorts of different action, and you're going to get to the point where you're going to go, I don't know what I'm even looking for anymore, and you abandon. So that's what I mean, that there's a right way and a wrong way. Another thing is like hyper-speeding your sliders. So say, for example, you've got some text on your slider, and you don't give your viewer a chance to read it. So say, for example, you set your slider to 3,000 when you've got more than 15 words. There's no way in heck people are going to read those 15 words in 3 seconds. Okay, so those are some of the rules for using sliders. How many plugins? As many as you can think of. However, the more plugins you install, now you do get warned that, hey, there's an update available. But the more plugins you install as WordPress updates, I think that Heather can attest that plugins will break with updates. And when they break big. So you don't really want to install too many. Like if you're using them all, absolutely. But usually if you've got that many functions, you're probably overkilling at that point. So I would stick to your core functionality, whatever it is. And as you're adding them, that's great. But if you don't use them, delete them. You don't need them. You don't need to see them. Those would be core ones, absolutely. But then you've got contact forms. You've got event manager if you've got a special event. You've got scheduler. There's even one, and again, the name escapes me, but I've used it. It's a CMS system. It's an open source CMS. It's not Candy. It's Sweet, something Sweet, anyways. And it's a reference to Candy or something. I'll look it up. But you've got a CRM system that you can actually implement into your WordPress as well. And it's all open source. And anybody that's looked into a CRM system can attest that they can go anywhere from $10,000 up to over $1 million, depending on what you want. So this is actually a very effective tool. Okay, so we're over an hour. Do you guys want to just keep going through and give yourself more time at the end, or do you want to stretch your legs? You're going to go stretch? All right, so why don't we take about 5 minutes and then we can, because I want to give you guys some chance. Okay, so I'm going to resend that to you. Oh, stop broadcast.